So what we have going on today is going to be a little bit of time for you guys to review because you have your Unit 2 matter test tomorrow. So a few things that I want to get talking about is I want to make sure that everybody at some point in this period goes in and make sure that they have done both sets of lecture questions for this week. You need Monday's lecture questions on separation of mixtures, and you need yesterday's lecture on law of conservation of mass. So you want to make sure you've gotten both of those done. And then there is a review sheet that I'm going to give you time to do. Okay. There is a review sheet I'm going to give you guys some time to do, and the key is also on Schoology. Wonderful. So the other thing I would just like to jump into right now and talk about is the test. Okay. Wrote it last night. Got it finalized, all that kind of good stuff. I'm actually kind of pleased with it. It's nothing like the test you would have taken, sans pandemic, because it is multiple choice, fill in the blank with the answers, things like that. But some of the questions will make you think, and I'm pleasantly excited. Now, half of them are just route memorization, but a few of them will hopefully make you think. It is 30 questions and 80 points. That is a nice chunk of change. Okay, to put on your grade. And remember, we are going to tack this onto today is the last day of the quarter, technically, but we're going to make sure that this gets on first quarter. Okay, everything on the review sheet is fair game. One of the things that is not on the review sheet is the conversions and measurement stuff. I will not put that on the test. Any math that you will have to do will be density based. But the other thing that did not go away are sig figs. You will have to do sig figs. And are the rules for sig figs on the review? No. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you the rules, but you have to do it in your math. Okay, if that makes any sense. But the math back there does use sig figs on your review sheet. Okay, so everything on the review sheet's fair game. Math answers will be in significant figures. I tried to write a few questions that will make you think. Hopefully, not everything will be directly off of a review sheet or directly off of a note. So some of them might have to apply. For those of you at home, again, it's for all my tests and quizzes. It's open from 7:30 to 1:30. Except for you guys will take it in this class, and it is open for 45 minutes. That's a minute and a half per question. Not exactly. It's a little less than a minute and a half per question, but I think it's a very fair test. I suggest having a blank piece of paper and a pencil and a calculator. There is a calculator in the actual test, so if you don't have one, that's okay. But if you want a piece of scrap paper to kind of draw, there are some, density things where you have to tell me where things are, so it might be good to have a scrap piece of paper. Then what I did upon our staff meeting last night, I decided that it would probably be a good idea to collect some data from you guys, how things are going, things like that. So not a part of the actual test, because I didn't want to cut into your 45 minutes, but after you're done with the actual test in the Friday folder, there is another assessment. And I will give you, there's going to be a survey in there, kind of just how things are going. It will be anonymous. Okay. If you go in there, you'll click the link. You'll answer some questions about how everything is going, and then you'll click yes that you took it. Okay. If you do that, I will give you 2 bonus points on your test grade. So you could miss a whole question and it wouldn't affect you. Okay. So I just want to get a little bit of honest, anonymous feedback. Again, you will not have to log in. I'm figuring out how to do SurveyMonkey, so you have to log in. Okay, so we're doing a little bit of kind of collection on how you're feeling about everything, if we need to make changes and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so that is not technically part of the test itself, but I'll put it in there. And if you do it, I'll give you 2 bonus points. The bonus points won't go into Schoology. I'll just tack the bonus points on your grade when I put it into PowerSchool, which then PowerSchool will save your grade, and that's your grade forever. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So that is, and if you opt not to, I'm sad because I'd like some feedback from you. But if you run out of time during our period, I get that as well. Okay. So that makes sense. So that's kind of what the test breakdown looks like. So 30 questions, 80 points. Can really help that quarter 1 grade if you want it to go up. I guess it could also help it go down, but let's not do that. And everything on the review sheet's fair game. What I want to do very quickly before I turn everybody over just to practicing, there is a concept map in your packet. Concept map. We are going to go through and do that very quickly. And if you can say, yep, yep, and you understand everything we're talking about, that means you're sitting really pretty for this test tomorrow, okay? So the whole unit was all about matter, okay? And we decided that matter is anything that has mass and volume. Anything that has mass and volume. Anything that has mass and volume. Then we talked about three kind of overarching pieces of matter. We talked about types of matter. We talked about changes in matter. And we talked about properties of matter. Nice. All right. So then let's focus on types here very quickly. There were two main kind of subtitled types. There are pure substances. Pure substances. And in pure substances, you have two types of pure substances. You have elements, which are the most basic forms of matter. Everything off of the periodic table, hydrogen, oxygen, nickel, copper, and they're the building blocks of all matter. Then we also have compounds where you have two or more elements chemically joined together. You can bet that you're probably going to see some of those nice little pictures that you love so much with the microscopic look at and telling me which are elements and compounds and all that kind of good stuff. Awesome. Then, if it's not a pure substance, it's a mixture. If it's not a pure substance, it's a mixture. And there were two types of mixtures. We had, if you cannot see the parts, homogeneous mixtures. And then if you can see the parts, that was a heterogeneous mixture. So that's all. Everybody's feeling, yeah, I got all that. Awesome. Then we took a minute and we talked about different types of changes. So I'm going to go back up to the middle column. We will figure it. We'll do all the rest of that, but I'm trying to go in order as we did the unit. There were two types of changes we talked about. When you have a physical change, you make no new matter. It just changes size or shape or state. But then in a chemical change, you have produced something brand new. And you might want to just remind yourself, again, I can't fit every single thing on this one piece of paper, of the different evidences so that when I'm asking you if it's a chemical or physical change, you can tell me. Then we also talked about properties. We had physical and chemical properties of matter. Physical properties of matter are like color, shape, size, things that you can observe with your senses, things that you can see or measure without changing it chemically. Chemical properties, you would have to do a chemical that you're talking about reacts with or flammable or some things having to do with pH. Okay, so you probably know those. The two new ones that you might want to make sure you do take a look at are intensive and extensive. Remember, if it does not change with size, that means it is intensive. And if it does change with size, it is extensive. And then we spent a lot of time talking about and calculating density. Density here, I kind of tried to draw this to you just to remind yourself it is a physical intensive property, means it doesn't change with system size. Density mathematically is the amount of stuff in a given space. or mass over volume. So it's how much stuff is packed in your matter. Beautiful. The unit for mass when you're doing your math problems are grams. The unit for volume when you're doing your math problems depends on what your substance is. It's either milliliters if it's liquid, or it is centimeters cubed if it is a solid. And then the unit for density itself is either grams per milliliter or grams per centimeter cubed. Again, depending, is it asking you the density of a liquid or is it asking you the density of a solid? The last thing about density you want to know, I can guarantee you have to have it memorized. The density of water is 1. Got to have that in your head. And you have to know that it's going to sink if it's more dense than 1, and it's going to float if it's less dense than 1. You're going to talk about, so if you put something in water, then you need to know if things are less dense, they float. If they are more dense, they sink in general. Perfect. So everybody feels good on that. That was week 2. Feeling good. Lovely, lovely. Awesome. Then we went a little bit further into ways to separate mixtures. There were 4 ways. If you are separating based on boiling point, that's called distillation. If you're separating based on boiling point, that's called distillation. Simply separating based on solubility is called filtration. Separating based on density and solubility happened in the fume hood. That's called a centrifuge. And then separation based on color is chromatography. Chromatography. One thing to remind yourself, that filtration and centrifuge only work on insoluble things, okay? You cannot filter something that is dissolved. And just to remind yourself, soluble means can dissolve, insoluble means cannot dissolve. But remember, it's like odd that the filtration looks like it's going to the soluble. Maybe I shouldn't have put that in there. But insoluble things can be filtered, insoluble things can be centrifuged. Or you cannot take anything out that is soluble. One other term we learned and talked about here is a precipitate. A precipitate is a solid that falls out of solution. And then we'll take it back to where we ended yesterday. We ended with chemical reaction parts. The things you start with are the reactants. The things you end with are the products. And that arrow sign there means to yield. Awesome. Last but not least, we said if you start with 10 grams of your reactants, you must also have 10 grams of your products, whether or not they're on that scale or not, they have to be somewhere, because the law of conservation of mass says matter and mass cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. Okay, so that was the 4-week unit, kind of on one piece of paper. There are some things like sig figs you need to go over. You might want to make sure you know the evidence of the chemical changes, things like that. But this is a pretty much a snapshot of what you have going on. Okay, so what we're going to do for the rest of the period is everybody that is here and that has come here, I have a new, I had to change on up the participation points. So I want everybody to open up their Chromebook. Open up your Chromebook. And you're going to go into the week 8 participation points. And it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to ask if you came to Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday class. You have to come to at least one of them in order to get credit. And you can put all of them if you obviously came to all of them. But so it looks a little bit different here. And this is how it's going to look as long as we're remote or as long as we're hybrid.
But it's not open.
No! Thank you, Alex. I appreciate it. Settings. Open. Oh, look, that's last week. Thank you. Oh, don't tell me Schoology's being slow. Okay, try now. Participation points. Then the other thing I want to make sure that you guys can see inside of that lovely little folder. I thought I heard some chicks. Maybe I just feel like I'm in this more folder. You should be able to see the answer key here. So make sure that you can see the answer key to the review sheet. And then you're just going to take the rest of the time today to go ahead and, so you did your participation points. Everybody's feeling good. You have about 25 minutes. And in those 25 minutes, you are just going to go ahead and do the review sheet, front and back. It will tell you everything that's fair game on the test. I'm going to take some attendance, see if anybody has any questions at home. And one more time for you if you guys came in late. 30 questions, 80 points. Everything off of the review sheet is fair game. I took a look at the review sheet once I had the test and said, hey, is question one off the test somewhere in the review sheet somehow? Yes. Is it all verbatim off the review sheet? No. Some of them are going to make you think a little bit, which is awesome. Math answers will need to be in significant figures. Okay. So that's a little rundown. You guys are doing your review sheet. I'm going to turn on the jams. Hopefully we're feeling good. And first period, you guys here, we'll just come in and take it. And tomorrow, anybody at home, it's open from 7 until 1:30. Perfect. Thank you, guys. All right, let's take some attendance. You people here. Let us see. Stop the recording. Stop.